So welcome everyone to our little mess here of the VIWeek, what is new in DQMH 5.0. We realized that there was something lost in translation when we called it an intro to DQMH, and some of you may not be as familiar with DQMH. So hopefully you got an email we sent you with some information. We're going to try to give you a little sneak peek of what DQMH is, but the main focus of the presentation is going to be what is new in DQMH. So we'll do a quick overview reminder, what is DQMH. Then we're going to talk about what is new in 5.0. So what the biggest change, and it's a change that's behind the scenes, but we're going to show you why we made this change, is we replaced the run BI method in BiServer with using a start asynchronous call when we start our modules. This was added, we'll talk about more later why. We also added support scripting for RT tester. Joerg is very excited about that one. We did some validate tool improvements that we're going to go over. The API tester, for those of you who have been using DQMH for a while, you probably already know how much I love API testers. We are improving the developer experience. And then request and wait for reply, timeout now returns error. And hopefully there will be enough time for questions. And Joerg said that here from the horse's mouth. I tried to look for a good joke that I could do about this, and then I found out that I didn't know what was the sound that horses make in English, so I just gave up.
You could have asked me for a good joke, right?
Well, you could put your joke now if you have it.
No, now you're prepared. That's only half the fun.
All right. Okay. Being figured out right now. Yes, I think we figured it out. So who are we? DSH Workshop. By the way, Darren Nattinger was telling me that our slides look like we have a big breakpoint, that it's a wide loop with a breakpoint because it's red. Anyway, DSH stands for Delacorp, SSDC, and Handful Software Engineering, the companies of DSH founders, myself, Steve, and Joerg. And together with Brian Powell, who joined the team in 2020, we boast more than 90 years of combined real-life experience. They are very old, I'm not, in developing software and fulfilling projects, both fixed price and based on time and materials. I've been doing LabVIEW for about 20 years. I'm the DQMH lead architect. I started Delacorp 14 years ago. We do both software and hardware consulting, and a lot of what you guys see me doing on the software side, we do on the hardware side. We work with startups that know how to design one device, but then when they have to go to manufacturing, they have no idea on how to design for manufacturing. So they don't know how to scale, extend, and do maintainable products, which to me seems very similar to software. Luis doesn't agree with me, but that's another story. You can talk to me about work teams, user experience, developer experience, source code control, unit testing. And as some of you know, we released the LabVIEW Graphical Programming 5th edition last year. And this year I was going to be doing a book tour, pick the wrong year to do that. And yeah. Joerg?
Welcome, everybody. Hello from my side. It's a nice afternoon here in Germany. So I'm based out of Germany, but I'm an Austrian. I have been writing software for a living for 2 decades now, and I didn't start in kindergarten, so that means probably that I'm old already. That hurts a bit. I've been working with LabVIEW since 27 and really got into it when I did the CLA certification and joined the awesome, LabVIEW and CLA community here that really enthused me a lot. Up to the point that recently we became the first NI Center of Excellence here in Germany. I'm very thrilled about that because it stands for really everything that we do. So I run my own little company. And I personally am very interested in figuring out how to make small teams work. So talk to me about working in small teams. Also, as I've been doing more or less only fixed price work here, as it's usually in Europe, we try to figure out how to do that the easiest way. And of course, I'm a big sucker for process and workflows and standardization and automation of those. I'm a DQMH trusted advisor, which means Fab has vetted me to make sure that I know my stuff about DQMH. and yeah, architect, Lab Champion, Alliance Partner, Center of Excellence. And another thing that I'm very happy about and very proud of actually is the user group that we're having here in my little town of Würzburg in Germany, which we are trying to run and organize, and that's been going very nice, and I enjoy that very much. Okay.
All right. So, okay. So what we're going to be talking about is again DQMH 5.0. I'm going to let you do the Our Giants Are Female, Joerg.
Right. So some of you might know this theme, Our Giants Are Female. Fab and Steve kicked it off, I think, sometime before or at the first GDEFCon. And the point being is to advertise the fact that gender doesn't say anything about anything. Actually, gender or sex, I'm not sure even which word to use now. But we don't want to differentiate between male and female when we're talking about stuff here. And we made it a habit to have one slide at each presentation to talk about a female that really did inspire us in some way or helped figure out stuff or was like instrumental at starting stuff out. In the first presentations, I think there were many technology-related women on the slides, but for today I picked a very different one, I think, Helen Keller. As you might, some of you might know her. She was an American author, political activist, and a lecturer, born in 1880 and lived until 1968. So she was the first deaf and blind person to earn a Bachelor of Arts degree. And I think this is, I can't even start to imagine how that was like for her in that age, back in that time, being deaf and blind. So she contributed a lot to many different aspects of life and of culture. And I picked up one of her quotes that I like very much. And the quote goes, "Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much." And I think this stands very much for our VIWeek here. Look at what we've managed to come up with in the shortest amount of time just by working together. It also stands for DSH, our new project in the Love Child that we have running, because this is also all about collaboration and about being more than some of the parts. And last but not least, I think this also applies to DQMH, actually. We're going to get into that later on. Okay.
All right. So how will we be spending our time? Hopefully no more technical issues. Thanks again to Michael coming to our rescue. We're going to do an introduction to DQMH, quick overview reminder. I know that on WebEx you can raise your hand and see if you've already used DQMH, but I'm more interested on the how many people we have that are not familiar with DQMH. So either raise your hands or put something on the chat so we get an idea of how many people we are talking about that don't know DQMH that are on the session right now. And then we're going to dive into the what's new in DQMH. And like I said, questions from the audience. So I don't know if we have a lot of people that don't know what DQMH is. Brian, Steve, seen anything on the chat?
Nothing on the chat, Fab. I think you can.
One on the chat saying new.
Okay, new. All right. All right, so you're going to have plenty of homework after this. Whoever is
on the chat,
new to this.
Three on the chat. Well, and hands up. Good man. That's the first time I've seen that used. So that's three. Yeah, we got a few.
Okay, we have a few. All right. So what is DQMH? Well, DQMH stands for Delacorte Queue Message Handler. Looks like the NI queue message handler. One of the reasons for making it look like the NI QMH was to make sure that it was accessible to NI support, accessible to people that take the NI courses. It would look familiar. It would be easier to jump in if you were already coming from those. Looks like code from Core 3, so it makes it accessible to CLDs. There's plenty of videos and online documentation, so CLADs can contribute to a DQMH project. If Jeff DeBoer is on the chat, he can tell you that he took an intern, sat him in front of a computer and said, "Watch this lady." I'm so sorry for him. And then he watched all my videos to get to learn more about DQMH. So it is possible. He created an application by the end of that. standalone code that can be reused, and it works with testend. That was something we wanted to make sure we could do. Yesterday, talking to one of my team members at Delacorp, we were talking about all the use cases of DQMH, and one of the things we said is whenever you have a global resource, like a database, a dashboard, or something that is being accessed in multiple areas in your application, encapsulating that on a DQMH module makes it a lot easier to use, to maintain, to test, and also to provide an API tester for others to use it. And that's what happens when you work with testend. You move to testend, you move to LabVIEW, what LabVIEW is good for, which is the testing and programming, and you just leave in testend what testend is good for, the sequencing, pass-fail, report, and user management. It uses object-oriented programming, but it does not require understanding it. This is something, unfortunately, that's still a showstopper. I think, and one of the things that we saw when we started working with DQMH is we wanted different levels of proficiency to be efficient in LabVIEW programs. And in a lot of companies, you may have people that are using LabVIEW 80 hours a week, where, wait, 80 hours, that's much. 40 hours a week, where there's other people in the company that maybe use it 80 hours a year or a week along the year, right? So then they need to, they don't have the time to go and learn something that's too complex. It supports multiple instances, and the scripting tools automate the creation of user events to save time and avoid mistakes. It also makes it, I know the scripting tools don't provide the cleanest code, but at least every code in the team looks the same, right? It won the LabVIEW Tools Network Product of the Year on 2016. Unfortunately, you cannot win it more than 1 year, but I'm sure that we would keep winning it if you were allowed to do that. So why DQMH? And that's Joerg is going to tell you from his point of view.
I must get quicker with unmuting me. So I'm going to be very controversial here and say it is the best framework out there for small teams. And Fab and Steve always laugh when I'm being dogmatic, because I hate being dogmatic. So in this case, I'm going to claim that I'm not being dogmatic, but I'm just stating it as it is. So if you can show the rest of the slide, please, Fab. Why is it that I think that it is the best framework out there for small teams? So as Fab already said, it is based on an architecture that many people are familiar with, many people coming from the NI world, many people having attended the first core trainings. And it is good to have an architecture to work off of that we are already familiar with. It also ties back to making it easier for other people to support the framework, the applications, questions, the users, if they're coming from a place that all involved parties know of. Then it helps with good coding practices, because seeing as it's modular, seeing as it does script a lot, seeing as it takes care of many things, you can focus on the work that you have at hand. And especially for small teams, which in my case often consist of people who are not educated software developers, but rather experts in different domains. They need software as a means to an end. And they are maybe not even interested in becoming the best software developer in the world, because they need to do something else in their daily lives. And it helps so much to have good tools that take care of a lot of that. The thing I love the most probably is the self-documenting public API. So when you create new requests, as it is called for DQMH, new functions for your modules, the dialogues that pop up and the scripting behind it will take care of offering you the opportunity to input documentation while you're creating stuff, and also putting that somewhere where you can find it again. So if you open up a DQMH module, you know immediately where to look at for the public API. There's one defined location where you can look for those functions that you're supposed to use, and they will have the documentation inside. So really, you're good to go from the very beginning. The next point is it is publicly available, and widely so. So it's very popular and very well supported and documented. So there are, I think, hundreds of thousands of people using it, which means probably that most of the bugs, if there were any in the beginning, have been ironed out. In the meantime, Delacorp is very responsive in reacting to questions that you might have. in reacting to feature requests you might have, in reacting to bug reports that might come up. And there's also a big community on the NI forums and in other places that's really like waiting for questions to be answered, helping out, sharing source code even. So this is a vast source of information and tools that you can tap into. And last but not least, it is free, but with an optional commercial license. So even you can, even if you have trouble using open source stuff, or if you need to make sure that it will be supported for the next 20 years, as much as you can make sure such a thing, there are also solutions for that out there. So since we started using DQMH, and it was a very interesting start for me personally, because I had to move very fast back then, and Fab helped me out day and night. I have never looked back, not once. I just love it more and more.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I didn't pay him to say this, by the way. All right. So for those of you on the chat, I'm imagining that some people are like, hey, at least give us some introduction or something. We have put some links here. And, somebody was telling me this looks kind of weird. Well, it looks like that because that's how it's easier to do a Google search. So if you do a search for delcor.com documentation DQMH or how to learn DQMH, you will get to this. And this is part of the new things on DQMH 5.0. We get a lot of praise on our documentation. You get to our documentation by going to Delcor documentation and clicking on DQMH documentation. And we get a lot of praise about our documentation, but one of feedback that we also get is that it has grown so much that it's hard to know where to start. Even the getting it started, it was already 2 levels down, and we needed more of a high overview. So we created this page for DQMH 5.0 that's called How to Learn DQMH, and there are different ways to learn DQMH. We put 3 different paths. All the paths do require that you know what queues are, that you know what a producer consumer is, and that you know something about the NIQMH. An understanding of user events, which are also known as custom events or dynamic events, is important. For those of you that have never heard the user event term, we're not talking about clicking on the front panel on a control. That's just an event. A user event is when, as a developer, you customize when an event gets generated. So that's just a prerequisite for the 3 paths. But then, depending on your type of learning, if you're okay using generic terms, like the generic project will do things like do something else, and wait for reply. And those are the actual names that we are using. So if you're okay with abstraction on that type of names, then you can start clicking on the different sections here, and it will be taking you to the different sections. You can click back to go back of the documentation and then follow these steps to get there. At the end, you can take the DQMH framework badge. For those of you that say, well, but this is outside of NI, why would I use it? If you open the DQMH badge, you will see there are 2 framework-related learning badges from NI. One is DQMH and the other one is Actor Framework. So at least NI thinks that we're at that level, right? So it is recognized by NI. The other part would be if you learn more by looking at a sample project that does something specific. We have created our version of the continuous measurement and logging sample project. So this one is actually simulating a data acquisition and displaying a data acquisition and has some configuration. It is a super simplified way of doing it. Like if we were to do this for a customer, we would add a little bit more complexity, but at least gets you to start to see how to use DQMH on an actual application. If you're just going to be using DQMH modules generated by others, like you're not going to be designing your own code, you're just working with a module that you're created for you, then you just need to go to the overview and check the examples. And then there's a section specific for modules and test end. We also have instructor-led online training that has been delivered by some of the DQMH trusted advisors. You probably have seen Sam Taggart announce his on LinkedIn. So he delivers the training that we deliver. There's option for instructor-led on-site, and there are other learning resources too. You can go to our YouTube channel. There's Joerg was talking about the forum posts. In forums, there's a whole post about what made DQMH click for you. So others share their experiences on what helped them learn it. And then our friend Tom, he did a great tutorial series that you can go. So the nice thing about his is that you don't have to slow him down, where with my videos, most of the time people have to slow me down. And the book that I mentioned earlier has a whole chapter on why would you want to use a framework. And I talk about both DQMH and Actor framework on that chapter. Back to the instructor-led things, DSH workshops also has a DQMH workshop. If we're doing it for a specific customer, then we customize the class to, instead of using a generic project, use a project that is good for the customer, right? And I don't know, Joerg, if you want to talk about that a little bit more, or do we keep going?
I think we could just keep going,
Okay.
seeing as we're already half an hour in.
Okay, so a real life example of an application using DQMH modules. So, that's here. And what I did is create this little video of showing you a real project that has multiple DQMH modules. There's a main login and control module, and that main BI is just showing a bunch of graphs. It's an array of graphs there. And then we have a temp controller, DAC measurements, a logger, and a graph display. And that graph display sometimes gets people off. Like, why would you have a DQMH module just for a graph? Well, let me show you on the API tester there that I can change the name of my DAC graph, and then just put, like, for example, demo channel, and select what type of it is, and then run a new one, and it has that new title. So it allows me to generate a graph and send it the data that I want to see. So this is what's called a DQMH clonable module. So when you see it on the regular application, you can see that we are sending a bunch of data to an array of clusters that has also a Boolean that selects whether a graph is visible or not. And in the next video, I'll show you how that is used. So that one. So in this one, the customer already had this crazy configuration document. I would not recommend have a document like this, a configuration file like this, but they already had it, and we had to use it. And it decides whether a channel is visible or not. And you can go to the configuration editor, and the configuration editor, figure out what is the XML file that you're using, and figure out the configuration from that configuration file. And that configuration editor is a DQMH module, right? And each one of the pages are also DQMH modules. And then here, when you right-click on one of the graphs, you can select to pop up the graph. And that pop-up graph display is the clonable module that I showed you earlier. So what this means in a team environment is Steve could be working on the graph DQMH module while I am working on the main application, and we won't be stepping on each other's toes. And also, Joerg can come back later and say, guys, I want to make that graph look different. Okay, so this is just an example again of an application that's using multiple DQMH modules. All right. So hopefully that gives you an idea of what DQMH modules are. Are there any questions? No?
Darren's already answered it, so if not
Okay.
answered in chat, that's fine.
Okay, perfect. So there's, going back to the documentation, there is a Where is it? What is new on DQMH 5.0? So you can go and peruse this at your pleasure. There's also release notes for DQMH 5.0, and you can see that those include a lot more detail on everything that we added. So you can visit those there.
Actually, I forgot we were streaming, so I probably did ought to talk to the questions that weren't in. Is the chat in on the stream line? Hold on. Carry on. Ignore me.
Okay. Present again. Okay. So we moved to start a synchronous call instead of using the run VI method for BiServer. And this was to address the root loop issue. And I don't know if anybody in the audience has heard about the root loop issue, but you're about to find out about it. Also, there was a bug that Joerg's going to talk more about it, but if you were using real time with UI enable on a Linux device, the BiServer methods were not working right if your BI was not in reentrant. So if it was a singleton, if it was non-reentrant, you have problems with control value set, control value get, and that messed up the DQMH architecture. So for the longest time, we only supported real-time clonable modules. We now support singletons as well. The other thing is the run BI method in BiServer is not present in NXG. So making this move is also going to make our code easier to migrate if or when that time comes. So I'm going to show you a demo from Andreas' test. And I think that Tino, who works with Andreas, is either on the WebEx or on the YouTube thing. So Tino, this is where you tell Andreas that he became famous. Right? So some setup here to show you what I'm doing. I have two versions of LabVIEW. DQMH works for 2014 and newer. The only reason I have two versions of LabVIEW here is because I wanted to be able to show you two versions of DQMH and not have to be going back and forth, installing and uninstalling. So 2019 is going to be showing you 4.2, and 2020 is going to be showing you 5.0. But again, DQMH works for 2014 or newer. So let's look first at the one for 4.2. Let me minimize this. So we're on the one for 4.2. I call this our Minion module. It doesn't do much. It's just a clonable module. And it has this API tester. And here's what Andreas threw at us. He is starting as fast as possible clonable modules, but he is stopping right after he's starting the second clonable module. So this had an issue. If you run this test, one of the things that DQMH modules do is if they encounter an error at the end, they stay open. So we had this particular error here, and this was a race condition on the closing of the events. The other little issue is your library is still locked. And when you go to test the Minion API, you refresh, you have all the modules there. Although they already stopped, they're still there. So this was, it was not really a good thing. There are ways to fix this. And the workaround that we used to recommend people was you just start a dummy module outside of your loop, and then you stop that dummy module when your loop is done, right? So you would do something like this, tunnel mode, last value, clear errors, right, Brian? This is one of the requests for improvement that we have, is to make the stop module work even if there are errors. Right now, that's not how it works. Okay, so if we have this thing, this took care of the problem of the not having the modules. Well, right now I have a mess because I already had some zombies running on, but that was one issue. All right, so that was the workaround for 4.2. Now the root loop issue. LabVIEW has a main loop that takes care of high priority items. And there are certain functions in LabVIEW that need to wait for that root loop to be available. Well, the run BI method in BiServer is one of those. And when you start running this test, if I decide to press anything on the menu, notice that the iteration has stopped running. That's because LabVIEW is taking care of that menu. That's blocking the root loop. The run BI method in BiServer needs access to that root loop. The program stops. So you can imagine how bad this is if you are in a manufacturing site, the operator opens the menu, somebody calls them on the phone, and then they walk away, and now everything stops. So this was not good. And this is fixed, all right? So this was 4.2. So for some of you that were wondering if I should upgrade from 4.2 to 5.0, this was the main thing that we were addressing. If we look at the start module and go to the block diagram, the way we were starting our modules was using the run BI method in BiServer, okay? All right, so I'm gonna show you now how we fix this on 5.0, so do not despair, this is fixed. I'm gonna go now to the Andreas test on LabVIEW 2020. No, I don't want you, I want you over here. Andreas test on 2020. Okay. So same thing, it's called a Minion. Doesn't do much. There's the Andreas test. I'm just gonna make these bigger so you can see the menu when you look at the block diagram, looks the same. If I run it and I press the menu, it never stopped. I'm gonna do it again, try to go really fast. Oh, come on. Fabiola, you're not being fast enough. There. You can see how it's not stopping at all. And when I go to the test Minion API, if I do a refresh, there's nothing there. So it is a lot cleaner. And that was, I'm not going to get into all the details of everything that changed here. I'm planning on doing blog posts and more explanations later. The book was already talking about this version, so it has some explanation on that as well. But you can see that now we're using a start asynchronous call instead of run BiServer, run BI method in BiServer. Okay. Any questions about that? Nope. I hope I get some excitement there or not.
Yeah, there's some comments saying that was they've seen it in other things, and that's a good problem.
Okay, so yeah, so that's why this was something needed to be fixed. I also wanted to mention, like, that Andreas test is now part of our test plan. So this is just me showing you that, you know, we run all these tests, and I'm scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and we run all these tests over every single new version of DQMH. So when we discover a new test, it makes it into the test plan. We also have a folder on that has all the BIPC files with the different releases of DQMH and a project built with those versions of DQMH. So when we are running our tests, we're running the test on all of these versions, especially the validation and upgrading tests. That just goes to what Joerg was saying about us really staying on top of DQMH. Right.
Fabiola, if I could ask a few questions now, because the YouTube stream isn't seeing the chat, so
okay.
I think we probably keep them up to date.
Okay.
Run through the questions. So Kevin asked his questions for Joerg. Is your network module supported? He's answered in chat, but it's probably worth his while answering it now in DQMH5.
The short answer is yes, seeing as they should be like up and running anyhow when you open them up. I think we have not released a validated version for 5.0 yet, but if you just clone them or download them from the repo and open them in 5.0, it will be good to go anyway. So yes.
Okay. The main man, and this is Darren's answered this, but he said he missed whether the demo being shown, the one with all the graphs, was an example. And the answer was it's not a shipping example.
No, it was a real app.
Yeah, Tom McQuillan has mentioned, and Jeff DeBoer has answered, also agreed that the MGI panel manager works very well with DQMH module templates.
Yeah, but we need to start putting some pressure on MGI because they haven't updated it to the latest version of DQMH. So I'm more than happy to help them to upgrade it, but we definitely need to upgrade their templates.
Okay, so Matto, he says the run VI method, UI thread bottleneck, isn't it? Question mark.
Yeah, that was the run BI method was the one that was created, the bottleneck. Yes.
Yeah, you just.
I think there were some. I'm seeing that there's a question on YouTube about how would you pass inputs. If you go online to our documentation and look at the video on how to validate, so if you go to here and go to the section on validating an existing DQMH module, there's a video for validating from 4.2 to 5.0, and I show in that video how to add items. But the short answer is you go into your main BI. So in this case, it would be my minions here. And if I want to add, let's put a number. So if I want to add a number and I wanted to add that here, now I need to open the type def. And there's code needed there that guides you through the steps. And then you would just drag the BI here. Okay. And then once you do that, then you can input your numeric there, right? The validation tools would automatically upgrade your start module if you're not doing any inputs. If you are inputting data, it's going to tell you that you have to do it manually. So one thing you can do is remove that part of the code on your 4.2 version and then run the validator tool, and it will take care of it. All right. Well, I hope there's some excitement on us actually fixing that. Do you want to become the presenter now?
Oh, hold on. I still haven't finished the questions yet.
Oh, okay. More questions. Okay.
So, Mark Balla, why did you use the async call previously? To which Darren answers, he's good that he's on here. He's doing all the answering. Doing all the heavy lifting here. He said there are some reasons related to identifying the running state of re-entrant instances that precluded the use of call by reference.
Yeah. So, and actually, there's an explanation on 4.2 that we had on why we had done that. It turned out that it had more to do with something else, but let me show you. So you go to start module on 4.2, where we were using the VIServer. We had this note, the run BI method is used to launch the module so that subsequent calls of the BI, which reads the execution state property, will function correctly. The execution state property does not return useful values when the module main BI is launched dynamically via by reference function. And it had to do with us not closing each reference, like if for the start asynchronous. So if we were to close the reference, we probably would have gotten the information, but it turned out that it was not as easy as that. We had to do a lot more. You can see that there are some semaphores now introduced here. And like I said, I don't want to get into too much because I could use 8 hours to explain everything that we changed on the architecture. But it turned out that there was a reason why we didn't do that at the first time. And it was mainly we couldn't determine the running state. And one of the benefits of the singleton modules is that you can call the start module from anywhere. And that is very useful when you have things that are going to be starting at different times in your application. I hope that answered Mark Balla's question.
I think so. And... Yep, he's happy. Right, sorry. Carry on.
All right. So do I make you a presenter now?
Well, let's try.
Okay, now I don't know how to stop presenting.
Oh,
So, should
I
I
just need
be
to find you.
window? Edit,
Oh, I do it
share.
myself, right?
Maybe you can do it yourself, yeah, because I don't see.
He's on.
Share the screen. Share it.
That's way.
Okay, so you see my beautiful purple screen now?
Yes. Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so seeing as we're 48 minutes in, I'm gonna make this very quick. Those guys, if you're familiar with DQMH, know about the API tester, and Fab has mentioned them a few times. The thing is, if I now open up an example, I pulled out of a current project of ours, we built a DQMH module around the wonderful and lovely ODF report toolkit from SSDC, Steve's company. We use that one because we need to generate reports that are then processable by or through Microsoft Office on a PXI system, and this seemed the straightest way forward, actually. So we have a rather simple DQMH module here. You can see there's not a lot of functions, actually. We start a test, we stop a test, and we generate a document at the end of that. And while we are creating a DQMH module, DQMH will generate test functions in a separate VI, the API tester. So the API tester is external to the LV-lib that the module lives in, so it can only communicate through the official public API with the module, right? And whenever I create a new function inside the module, DQMH will also script a new button and a new case structure inside this module, so I can test and execute those functions. Now, this is very handy. This is very helpful. And seeing as we have built additional functionality on top of the default DQMH functionality, we also modify the tester. So we have a little VI here starting stuff or tapping into stuff, and we need to stop that if we started it here again. And for example, there's a logging event that we add to this test. Now, the not so nice thing about this combination of user events and LabVIEW is that they don't work if there's not a user interface, right? So on real-time systems, I cannot use these testers because the UI events won't be triggered. So if I click these buttons here, nothing will happen. But Delacore to the rescue. Of course, now there's an option in DQMH 5.0 to create a real-time tester. I think since 4, there was the option to create the tester for clonables, but now it's also there for singletons. So you can see my project file here, there's the module and the API tester, so the regular one. And now I can go to Tools, Delacore, DQMH, Module, real-time tools, create RT tester. It will pass the project and ask me, well, for which of your modules do you want to create this RT tester? There are only a few, so I select the ODF report and I say, OK. And immediately you see the magic happen. So it already created a VI. I put it into the project as well, and now it's working on populating this new VI with all the functions that we need. And Eureka, huzzah, there's the VI. And not only did it put all the buttons into the timeout case, so we can now read them in a way that's also working on real time. It put all the API calls in here as I had them before. Of course, I need to create now the controls that I need for those. So if I go here, I can just say create all controls and indicators and do the same thing. Let's see, here again. Sub, and it's executable, right? But the really, really great thing is DQMH was clever enough to also put the VIs that I had, or to take the modifications that I had made to the existing API tester and worked off of that. So I don't need to re-add those here, which is very, very handy, right? And the next really nice thing about this, so I would have to tidy up the UI a bit, of course. But now if I go and create a new request for the module, go to DQMH event, create new DQMH event. Again, it parses the project file for the modules and asks me which one. I say ODF report. I want to send something to the module and get something back too. So it would be request and wait for reply. I'm going to say praise VIWeek. How many times? So this would be my call to the module. I want to tell it should praise VIWeek maybe 100 times because I like it so much. And I want to get back, I don't know, something, a status. So let's create this request. So what's going to happen now? I input the name of the new function I want to have. I input an event description. I set which parameters I want to hand over and what I want to get back from the function. So I hit the OK button now, and DQMH scripting will turn on now. It will add all the bits and pieces I need for all of that, not only to my module, which I want to show first. Where's the block diagram? So I got a new case here, right? I got a new case for the incoming events. I only need to fill in what I actually want to do in this with this function. So I would put like a dialog window here and a loop for 100 times so I can execute it. But the important thing that I want to show is both of the API testers. So the regular one, which is the nice one that we had prepared beforehand, got a new button here. And if I go to this button, you can see it also created the case structure here. It even puts the request VI here. So only, again, I need to create the things that I want to input here, times especially, and I'm good to go. And the same thing happened to the real-time API tester as well. So again, it added a button here. And the only thing I need to do here, again, is just create the control. And again, I'm good to go here. Awesome.
So the one thing to mention, the reason we had to do that, for those of you that are not familiar with real-time can support user events, but it does not support events on the front panel because there's no front panel. So that's why we had to do this and go to, for you youngsters, you don't remember these, but in the old times, this is how we would use to figure out which button was pressed. You would create an array of buttons and figure out which one was the true one.
Yes.
Right, but that was all scripted. So for those of you who are new to DQMH, that's what we mean when we say that DQMH does some of the heavy lifting for you.
Yeah, say a random word, Fab, please.
Random?
Something random. Say something.
Say something random?
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I don't know. Hola, hello. What do you want me to put?
Hola, hello. So to prove that this is not scripted, you see this is real time. So everything that happened here automatically was done by DQMH scripting. So this is not a video, just to make sure.
Oh, that's what you wanted to say. And then hola is spelled H-O-L-A, by the way. All right. So you want to go back to the slides, or do I go back to?
I think I
sharing?
can just quickly bring them up because we want to share back in a second.
Okay.
Probably. We were here. Now we're going to validation, right?
Yes. So the validate tool, we found out that a lot of people didn't know that we have this tool. This is like us fulfilling the promise that we're maintaining the architecture for you. One of the big issues with not using object-oriented programming for everything is that if we change something on the main architecture, you have to change it on yours. There's not, well, I'll change the parent class and then you'll benefit from that. We can only do that for the admin and the Q class, but we cannot do it for the others. But given that we have very good scripting ninjas in the Delacorte team, we can use the scripting to analyze your existing modules on your project and then validate them and tell you what is it that it changed and then fix it for you. So the changes that we did for this validate tool, one is it shows up right after you install DQMH 5.0. So it alerts you, hey, we have these that will tell you what changed. And then now you can also validate your modules, all the modules in a project. I know, Jeff, they were on the chat was very excited about that. And now you can also validate without a project open. And the one that Joerg was very excited about is that we have a headless VI for this. So this means that you can integrate it with your continuous development and your continuous integration application. So I don't know, we're kind of running low, but if you do a search for the validated video, you can see what that is about. But I'm going to let Joerg show his next thing with the headless.
Just very briefly, because this is another thing that got me excited, as you said, is that now we can run this automatically. And I've been mentioning it a lot recently. We have our own release automation tools, as we call them, that are running on our build servers and automating different actions like running VI analyzer, doing documentation of the project, and building, of course, build specification and deploying them to locations where we can then access them. And now the latest thing that we added is running the DQMH validator, which works like a charm, actually. So it's parsing the project file, finding out if something's not validating. So in this example here, we got some things that did not validate all right. The tools will send an email with the report, and so you can look into that later on. And all of this is triggered through the Git actions, actually, and running on the build server, as I said. Okay.
Right.
Well, another thing, maybe I can get into that very, very quickly. I think you did mention it, actually, Fab, that the API testers do not stop the module anymore if the module was already running when you started the API tester. So
yeah,
imagine,
this is one of the developer experience improvements.
Yeah. So if you imagine you're executing your module either just manually directly by running the main VI, or actually from your application where you started, and then you want to debug, you want to use the API tester as a sniffer maybe, or even use the buttons on the API tester to trigger things. As it was before, you couldn't easily do that without changing the API tester, because when you stop the API tester, it would also stop the module, which we don't want. So with DQMH 5, that's not the case anymore. So for our application template that we use, we added the API testers to the runtime menu. So even if I'm running the executable now, I cannot like go look for the source, for the block diagram or things like these, but I still can open API testers from here. You see this, the UI is familiar probably. So this is just a normal API tester. I didn't need to do anything to it. And now I can trigger things or use it as a sniffer to see what's happening while I'm operating my, my application. And when I shut it down again, this guy here keeps working. So yeah.
It used to be that on exit, the API tester would always stop the modules. So you had to manually go make that change. But now we don't do that anymore.
Exactly. So this is very handy too. Yeah, this is this slide. Next one is request and wait for reply timeout. I think we can move very fast with that one. So it used to be.
Go ahead.
Fab, you go ahead.
Yeah, so we were basing the way the wait and reply worked on how the wait for notifications worked. And the wait for notifications turns out a timeout, and it doesn't return an error if the thing timed out. But we got enough people, Chris Farmer, one of the trusted advisors being one of them. I think Paul Morris is in the call too. Paul also had a big nasty bug that he was expecting the request and wait for reply to error out if there was a timeout. So we do send a status updated that said, hey, you timed out, but that was not beneficial for the project. So now the wait for request and wait for reply, if it times out, it still returns the light, the Boolean for yes, I timed out, but it also returns an error.
Which I personally like very much.
Have them, the validate tool will edit your existing wait for reply and add that new support.
I like that very much. We used to change those VIs where we needed it, but I think I like it even more now that it's a default setting or default behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, and his issue was with one of our templates. We have a project template for the Delacore configuration thing, and that's the one. But it was the same thing. it needed to be added. All right.
It's
So
stressing the fact once more that you can save your existing modules as a template, so you can prepare stuff as you see fit, and then create modules easily from that template. So it's all guided through the menu and through scripting. Save existing module as template, and then create new module, selecting one of your templates. Very helpful.
Yeah. So I think you need to let me, or I just share my screen. Is that how that works?
Okay.
Screen 2.
You say that as if it's an easy thing to do.
Share. Okay. I think I'm sharing.
Cool.
Yes, I am.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. Okay. So the next thing we were going to talk about was what if I don't like DQMH? I want my status updated to have a time stamp, or there are certain things that you would want to change. We don't make you marry our architecture completely. There are certain things that need to stay there for it to work, but you could make changes to your module. And we have several examples on the documentation. A typical one is people change this cluster to be a class. You can do that, and the scripting tools will still work. A good telltale about knowing that if something is going to work or not is these labels. Once you start getting rid of them, the scripting tools don't have their landmarks. So what I did for this example is I created a child of the DQMH queue. So this is normally the DQMH queue, and then I created my queue, and it's a child of that queue. And I really don't see the use for this, but it was a quick demo for you guys today. And what we did is my queue, when it enqueues things, it uses these format string to combine both a message and where's the origin of that message. So that means that I need to modify the enqueue. That means I also need to modify the creation of the queue, because now I'm not only inserting initialize, but I actually have to say that this is done during initialization. I have to modify my DQ, because the DQ now needs to parse those two and return both the message and the origin. And I need to make sure that all my events are using this new enqueue, right? So I'm using that new enqueue. So that was a very simple change. The main thing here is a new feature for DQMH 5.0, which is when I create a new event, this menu here for the enqueue message BI lets me either use the standard, which is the typical use. So if you haven't modified your templates like I'm showing, then you don't need to worry about this. But if you either have your own queue, or if you have packaged the DQMH libraries into a PPL, you can now choose the enqueue from within the PPL. And as you can see, it remembers, it's persistent. So because I did an example yesterday, it remembered that was my new enqueue. So I don't have to be remembering every time to select it. So this is more of a feature for advanced DQMH developers that have already modified their templates. But so if we were to do here, change the front panel color, and I create the OK, it's going to create the event, and it is going to use my new enqueue. That's the one that I asked it to do it. So I don't know if Vela is on the audience, but he had done several modifications to his template, and this was one of the things where he needed to then come in and change the enqueue for his enqueue. He doesn't have to do that anymore. All right. And you saw all the magic there again on the scripting. So if I were to finish that, all I have to do here is put property node, and yes, Darren, yes, I can hear you.
RN, it's so obvious.
What was that?
RN, it is so obvious.
Colors, bank color. change to right, and then go the color, change that, Control S, Control E. So if I go to the tester, I just need to select create control. This was one of Paul Morris's requests. We make the controls on the request have any preferences and stuff, so he keeps them. All right, so if I run that and I start the module and I show the module panel and I go, obviously if you're doing a demo like this, you need to go right. It didn't work. What did I miss? I know what I did. That brings me, so you can also change, and this is why you don't want to go messing up with your with the architecture without doing enough checks. Because I did this really fast, I forgot that I actually need to rename my event to make sure that it doesn't have any spaces in it, because my parser for the origin and message doesn't work well. So I'm going to rename that, and that should take care of it. So let me see if it works now. The module, show module panel, bright color, and it's still, I need to go back and change the code there. See, this is what happened. This is why I normally do videos for the demos, because I can catch myself doing these things. I need to move that to change color. So the scripting didn't take care of that, and that's because we don't know if you may be enqueuing that somewhere else. So we have to be careful about not doing too much, not being too helpful, that we end up causing issues. Yay! All right, don't do that. Okay, any questions? No questions, Steve?
No, we're all good.
Right, probably people already started to step away. All right, so that's one more slide for Joerg, and then we can move on to questions if anybody has questions.
I think I can work off the slide, right? Because it shows everything we need to see. So when we started out using DQMH, we came from a different framework, which made it very easy to forward requests in any given way, because all was based on strings. So you just needed to take your string for the name of the module and the other string for the name of the function, and then maybe flatten the parameters or attributes to another string, and you could send them as you saw fit. With DQMH, this is a bit more difficult because of the strict data typing, which I like a lot, because again, it defines the public API very nicely. But in order to be able to do forwarding of messages via network and do that in a generic way, I had to change the behavior of the framework as it comes, because I wanted to wrap the actual message into the variant that's being used in the queue already, because then it was generic and I could forward it as I saw fit. And if the other party could read the name of the message and had all the data types associated to it available, it could then kind of like decode or reconvert the message back to the original format. And that way we have now generic networking communication possible. And what I did for that is, you can see it, the first indicator is that the wires are not blue, but purple now. So that makes them HSE wires, right? Because purple is our color. But the more important thing is that we changed the DQ message VI, and we added a Boolean flag to the message queue itself to say, do we want to forward messages through the network instead of processing them locally? And that would have the effect that instead of running the message, the code inside the message handling loop case that's associated to this message, we would instead forward the message via network to another module running on the other side of the network connection, and we would execute there. So this makes it now possible, for example, to have a module run on a real-time system. This is our most likely use case, but have the same module with the same source code on Windows and use the module's UI or even the API tester to kind of remote control the module. And you can see here the DQ message VI is in the child class that we created, and it does have a message blacklist to single out those messages that should not be forwarded. And all the other ones would then be wrapped into the variant and then sent to the send via network case instead of the original case, and then it just be forwarded via TCP. So I think another example of why it would be necessary to look into changing the basic functions, which I think normally you don't have to. Okay.
All right. So I think we are open for questions. So I guess I can stop sharing if I can figure out how to stop sharing, or I can leave it on in case people have questions that have to do with LabVIEW, and I can open LabVIEW. And again, people, I normally record all my videos, so my demos. So this was me really living dangerously.
I think this will make people now dare look into DQMH, seeing as you are only a mere human.
Oh, come on.
So one thing I want to add is the things that we showed today. I mean, you all can find the Delacroix stuff easily. The template and the generic networking modules are some of the things that we share in an open source manner as well. So if you're interested in that, you can talk to me, or we can publish the link somewhere later on. A little bit of marketing for ourselves.
Yeah. And thank you for your patience. I mean, you know, we put this together in 2 weeks, this whole VIWeek. So any questions?
No. It's all
we killed them. Everybody fell asleep.
So another thing that
I haven't checked Discord yet.
Another thing that I want to add, seeing if there are no questions anymore, is that recently I've picked up DQMH training. Fab has done this a long time, and when the Corona situation kicked in very hard, we had to move from an originally planned training that was happening on site in 3 days to a virtual training for 2 days within, I think, 1 week's notice. And I got to say that it worked out so well. We were all so surprised. And this is something that I'm very confident would be beneficial for lots of people. So again, marketing for Delacroix and for anybody out there. I think this is working very well. DSH will be pursuing that much more in the future, I think.
All right, so
we've got a few questions coming in there. So Malcolm, and it's being answered in chat as well, which is nice. I like that. Because I can pretend it's me answering and I know what I'm talking about. So Malcolm says, what's the best way to see modules in subpanels? Paul's responded to that one saying MGI panels toolkit. Seems to be a fan favorite, that one.
Or our application template, I want to add.
Okay, application template.
It does similar things, other things, more and less. So maybe it might be another option depending on what you're looking for.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's up there.
The other thing with the subpanels too, you definitely can go with MGI panels. Now, the MGI panels do depend on Actor Framework. So depending on what you're doing, you may not want to bring that all that up. And it also, they're super powerful. They're super flexible. You can do .NET and other crazy stuff. You could also just create your own events that say insert yourself into a subpanel, right? Or extract yourself from the subpanel. So that's also a possibility. But definitely the MGI templates make it a lot easier.
Prof Haig is missing Hilton Starbucks. What else we got? Somebody asking about EA credits for DQMH training.
I think we can give an update on that later in the year.
Yeah.
The
something
EA
cooking,
credit?
but it's not.
But definitely send us an email. like if you want to use enterprise agreement credits for DQMH training, send an email to hello@DSH workshops, because the enterprise agreement stuff we're working with NI as part of DSH workshops.
Yeah. The more we know, the more pressure we can apply, shall we say. Marianne, forgive me, Marianne Garcia, question. For wait and reply events, why is the replies not bundled in a small case structure from the consumer? It would look more clean.
Okay, let me go to Lavi and see what we're talking about here. So if I go to my main BI, and she's saying for the wait and reply event stuff. So let me open one that actually has let's open the project, the source project for the project, program files, national instruments, 2019, 2020, project template, source.
I apologize for butchering your name, Marianne.
Okay. All right. So she's asking on the main BI. I will go look for the request, do something and wait for reply, do something and wait for reply. Yeah, it is a mess. Okay, so what is the question here? For wait and reply events, why the reply is not bundled in
the small case structure from the consumer? Why is the reply not bundled?
From the consumer.
Oh,
so
I assume. Yeah.
Because we're bundling here on the top. I think she's probably talking about when you're actually on the tester. I think I know what she's talking about, because this is a request feature that we get a lot. And once I show it, Joerg is going to agree with you. When we do this, we have to unbundle. And what people, the feature request that we have is that people would like for us to do this, where these would come out of here, and we would paste it directly there. And if I go to the block diagram, then it would be unbundle. Control I, like that. Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're saying? Yes, already. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes. So there is a feature request. By the way, I'm so excited. We got this. This started earlier. If I go to ni.com, Delacour, we have a brand new idea exchange for DQMH. It's called DQMH feature requests. And it is in here right now. It's empty, so I still need to work on moving things over. But what I'll do, Marianne, is move this one and then add it. Yeah. Thing. So if we go to here, it is here, DQMH feature request. So right now, it's empty. You can put your feature requests here, and people can vote for them, and we can use that to tell you if we are using it or not. The way we were keeping track of them before was through this document, DQMH feature request.
I think yes? Marianne is writing not in the module, actually. So the question might be slightly different.
Yeah, not in the tester, in the module.
Okay, so knowing the tester. Okay, and now I need to read of this. Okay, so in the module, so I'm in the module. I'm on the block diagram. Okay. All right. When you add a new event.
So why is the reply not bundled in the small case structure inside the consumer?
Oh, so you would want this bundle inside this little case structure?
So I'm answering now. I want that. I do that manually all the time, but I'm not sure if that's what Marianne asked for.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. So Marianne, go and put that feature request on the feature request. Let's see. Let's beat me to starting to migrate feature request, and then you would have the glorious first feature request there. The nice thing about Do It is that you can paint pictures and stuff on that one, so that will make it easier. Yes. No, thank you for your trust, DQMH, and on our team. All right. Any other questions, comments?
I think we may be all right. There's a comment about MGI panels being older than DQMH from Jeff.
Oh, Mike had a question about .NET with what? So the MGI panels allowed you to treat your VI windows for your DQMH module as a .NET window. And that allows him to do a container in .NET where you can float your windows around and move them around. So you can go play with that, Mike. That's definitely an MGI toolkit thing. The MGI DQMH panels. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, if you do a search on BIPM for DQMH, you will get ours. Well, there's some stuff here that I have on my machine, but then this is it. This is the MGI panel manager that they're talking about.
I just spotted another question from Patrick Miller. Are there any scripting options for creating helper loops?
No, that's one of the feature requests too. So in that one, it's already in the document. Like I said, I either need to migrate it or you guys can beat me to it and put it on the new ID exchange. Anything else?
Exchange works well as a method for collecting this information.
Yeah, because now we're going to be able to vote, to like them, to not like them, all that stuff. Okay. Yeah, Mike, and if you get stuck or whatever, let me know and I can help you out with that, with the demo. All right.
It's all quiet. Discord is quiet. YouTubers, all right. Chat is quiet. We're all good.
We're all good. Thank you so much, everybody. It was really nice to spend our morning with you. And I'm glad that
afternoon.
What was the
/afternoon?
Afternoon for you, yeah. Night for evening for others.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks for giving me an opportunity to wear a tie that probably fits Fab's desktop background. What's the color of your flowers at the moment?
You're talking about that? Yeah. Yeah, these flowers are gone. These are the blue bonnets. This was more in April.
Kind of fits.
It kind of fits, yeah.
Leo. Okay then.
I have no idea how to stop sharing. We can see people how they start trickling out. I hope this was good use of people's times.
Lots of thank you messages. Sure, it's all tickety-boo.
I think polite people is what we're seeing here.
Good. I'm so glad that we have a community, and when something drops, somebody else picks it up. So Michael from BI Shots, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.
You're sharing your screen. Okay, so I get. Oh, finally I found where I can stop sharing. There you go. Oh, and look at that. There's everybody there. I can see them in a grid. That's awesome. Sam, I gave you a little plug there to your online training.
I saw that. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, Mr. Putnam, you're there. I hope you liked it. Jeff, thank you so much, Jeff DeBoer. You have been so good on giving us beta testing feedback.
Fab, I'm up to 5 interns now that I've run through that process.
5 interns? I'm so sorry for them. Like, you can put them down through Tom's training, so they don't have to be listening to my voice.
Well, this year, at least right now, due to all this mess, I'm not getting any new ones for the rest of the year, but the one that I had last year came back. Not only that, but he was doing line code programming for the last, text-based for the last 6 months, whatever, at school, and he's happy to be back programming in LabVIEW again. So that's a good thing.
And he liked it.
Yes, he loves using our stuff.
Good. That's a good story.
Ironically, I wouldn't have been in Austin anyway if they'd had it, because my father's 75th reunion at West Point Military Academy was right now.
Wow.
So that got canceled, and this is at least, it's not being in Austin, but it's being with a lot of my friends and learning stuff.
I like this about being able to see the grid because I can at least see your faces. I miss everybody, so it's not the same as being in the same place, but it definitely it's a close second.
Well, I don't have any good Mexican food here in my area.
Do I need to send you some recipes, Putnam?
Sure. I'm cooking like crazy these days, which is...
you let me know what you want to learn how to make, and we can even schedule an online cooking lesson.
Well, my cooking volume has increased, but not so much because of this. It's because this time last year I was living in a hotel during the week and was very limited as to what you could cook in your standard hotel room.
Yeah.
So every night I'm trying to make something at least requiring some assembly.
That's good. Yeah, we'll normally cook, so this is not different. But yeah, I'm trying to vary a little bit the recipes.
Is the ceviche something that's easily done?
Ceviche is tricky. But it is straightforward. I wouldn't say easy. Nothing is ever easy. It's as easy as LabVIEW. It's straightforward because you have to leave your fish marinating in lime juice, and then the lime is what cooks it. So if you're not good with that, you can end up with raw fish instead of. Malcolm, any idea why I cannot install DQMH into LabVIEW 2015 from BIPM 2019? Yeah, it depends on what error you're getting, Malcolm. We had an issue, Jeff had an issue where your company was somehow blocking some ports on the FTP side, and one of the DQMH module was not getting downloaded. And then the other issue was fixed by running a BIPM as administrator. If none of those two things work, Malcolm, send me an email, and I'll send you a BIPC file so you can use that to apply it and see if that
and that's happened with multiple packages for me, and it's all on the same FTP server from what I could find, but it looked at either maybe the way it was packaged or something in it that just flagged it differently. It just didn't download. That was weird to find.
I've definitely had an issue with the
I haven't been able to reproduce it. Neither yours nor the other one was Olivier Jordan who had that issue. And then the thing is, once he was able to install it as administrator, then we uninstall it and run BIPM normal, and he was able to install it. So we weren't able to reproduce it, so we don't know exactly what's going on. Definitely, if you find issues, let me know.
In my case, I know that if I turn off the as I call it, the babysitter, because when I log into my computer, it automatically logs me into work, not work, my VPN. If I turn off the VPN, I can get it no problem. If I go to the site, I can download it manually, I can see it, and then I can install it that way, I think. But I know I turned off the babysitter, I could get the file. I'd have to download the file after I turn off the babysitter, and then it works. So I'm not sure why. And then I package it myself, and I give it to my team. So it makes it just hard on me to figure it out at first. But
Yeah. So they're asking about a comparison between DQMH, AKI, state machine, objects, messaging framework, Aloha. So yes, like Sam said there, he did a good presentation comparing both DQMH and Actor Framework. And it's a very good presentation because at the end of the presentation, I couldn't figure out which one was his favorite. So he really tried to be very unbiased about it. I know Q started to do a comparison table on the VIWeek, but I haven't been keeping up to it today with that, so I haven't checked where that is at. And I do on the book I do mention both Actor Framework and DQMH.
Sam's got a noisy keyboard.
Yeah, that's Sam is
Like an old typewriter.
Sam is typing as fast as he can. All right, Mike said on Discord that it was awesome. Okay. I think we're done. I'm just like at NI-week waiting for everyone to leave the room.
It's like, you hang up. No, you hang up. Oh, you hang up. No.
Yeah, exactly. Just like that. Exactly.
These are the fun discussions after the presentation, right? That we can't have in person right now.
Yeah.
That's why nobody's leaving.
So Marian was saying thank you for the presentation and for the great framework. Oh, you're welcome. That was a comment on YouTube.
There is one more comment, something about GitHub. I think you answered that the other day, but.
John, okay, let's like questions. Is there a plan to move DQMH development to GitHub or similar for community development? So my answer to that is, as much as I love open source, I know that somebody still needs to be the one that verifies the pull requests and keeps track of the quality of the product if we want to keep it at the high quality that is now. So that means that if we make DQMH open source, it's more work for me, and it would still be free. So I really don't see what is it in it for me. I'm totally being selfish here, and I'm hoping that everybody's getting their requests heard and that we're addressing what you guys need without having to go to open source. I'm not saying never, but at least right now it's like I wouldn't do it because I know it would just be more work for me.
As someone who has a couple open source things that are nowhere near as popular, I would agree with that assessment.
You would agree with that?
Yeah, if you actually care about keeping it up to date and people are actually using it and requesting things, it's a pain.
Yeah.
Luckily, the ones I have aren't that popular, so nobody really requests much.
Yeah, that is my fear. I mean, so far, the level of technical support has been manageable. It especially since the DQMH Trusted Advisors, you guys, I cannot thank you enough. You have been answering questions a lot faster sometimes that I can answer them on the forum, so that helps. And that's all of that is manageable. But I think making it open source and having people do pull requests and everything would increase the amount of work for me. But John, definitely put your feature requests on the forum, participate on the forum. Like I said yesterday, the DQMH Trusted Advisors get priority on their feature requests, so you can bribe them if there's a feature that you really want prioritized.
I like beer.
Sam goes easy, beer. Joerg, how can they bribe you?
I take big bags of gold. No, I gotta give a big shout out to the open source community because I recently asked one of the very few guys that use our templates already and contribute if somebody could look into validating the modules to 5.0 because I just didn't find the time. And one of the guys said, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And he did it and I merged it back and all was fine. So that was awesome.
Yeah.
So some things, there are benefits to it, put it that way.
Well, I just had something similar. My actor framework tester, at the time I was not using PPLs at all. and so it did not work with PPLs at all. But somebody decided they liked using PPLs, and it didn't work, so they are in the process of fixing it. So that's good.
There's the other aspect too that is difficult for me is that DQMH, the architecture in itself is nothing to write home about. It's a producer consumer. We just happen to extend it with events. It is a lot of the philosophy behind it, right? The encouraging you to do the right thing at the right time. So when you create your request, you are getting encouraged to do your arguments, to put your comments, to document. The block diagram that comes on your face at the top, the first is the API tester. There's a reminder that you need to test. So all of those things are also encouraging to do the right thing. An example, we're working with Mikael on in Australia to do an add-on for the G Suite toolkit, right, for the UML modeler to be able to model DQMH modules. And his first reaction was like, well, let me model the entire system and then generate all the code. And I'm like, no, because then people are never going to keep their API testers up to date. And the whole idea of DQMH is design what your request is, create it, go test it. Now do the next part, create it, go test it. If we have something that automates the entire generation, then that philosophy goes away. And that's also something that could happen by making it open source, right? That it would totally move away from the original intention.
Can I briefly get back to the contributor? I realized I didn't say his name. So it was John Gabriel from Pharmatronic in Italy who contributed. Big shout out to you. Thank you, John.
Yeah, and I will say Casey May is the guy who's doing the PPL stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, credit where credit's due, right? So it's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, adding to what Fab said, for me, I think it has been way more work than gaining from it so far, open sourcing the tools, because there is so much documentation and stuff that you need to prepare that would just not do if you're only using them for yourselves. I mean, probably you have lots of that stuff in place already, Fab, with DQMH, but still, I totally get your point. So, yeah.
Yeah, luckily I've avoided documenting my open source stuff as much as I probably should, which is probably a bad thing.
No, that, Sam, you know, the documenting as you go is the most important thing. That test plan that I showed, that I hope it was beneficial for you guys to see. The only way we can have that test plan is because we started doing it since version 1.0, right? And every time there's a new feature, we add a new thing. And every time there's a new feature, we add a new validation test and a new fixer. And that's one of the fights that I have to have with the scripting engines in the team, because sometimes they're like, oh, let's not do a fixer for this, right? It's too much work. And I'm like, nope, we need to do a fixer for it. There are things that I totally agree that it's just impossible for us to know. Like, for example, when we renamed that event, we cannot do too much, because then we get into a situation where we may be creating more bugs. So we do need to ask you to go check, did you put the right name there?
Yeah. Well, working with Casey has definitely helped me a lot, because, I mean, one of my biggest problems is I'm always doing work by myself. So, like, I try to think like I'm in a team, but I don't run into a lot of those issues until I actually start working with people. Yes. I'm like, oh, yeah. So, but working with him definitely made me solidify, like, a test plan. So I definitely do have a good test plan. So.
Yeah, that I think that's, and then the documentation. The one thing that always slows me down, though, to release DQMH is the online documentation. And the reason for that is I put embedded videos with examples and stuff. So I have to wait until we have the very, very, very final release to do the videos. And then that always takes time.
Yeah, I think the way to do it, I mean, your videos kind of complicate things, but I think the way to do it is the auto documentation, like the ASCII doc and Sphinx and all that stuff that Joerg and...
Yeah, but that doesn't explain the intention behind. Like, that doesn't go and say, go look at root loop issue here, and this is why we did it.
I think it still requires some manual editing afterwards, but it can generate a lot of it, I think.
Yeah. I think for our tools, what we needed the most was like a general getting started thing, like what is it that this thing does, and what are the 10 most important features from our point of view, and how do I even where do I start using it? And that's probably easier for a small reuse library. But seeing as we shared our Windows application template, as we call it, I mean, there's lots of things that it does that I just use daily, but never thought about describing it and spelling it out. And that was is continuing to be very much work for me.
But do you find that useful, though? Because I think, too, sometimes being very intentional about what you're doing, right, and doing the documentation forces you to be intentional and think about what you're doing and why.
I feel like I do like doing stuff the professional way, because that makes me feel comfortable. And having proper documentation and, like you say, thinking it through and finding out that some things are not easy to explain helps me get there, I think. So, I mean, this is nothing that I get paid for, so I could spend those burning the midnight oil somewhere where I earn money. I don't know. So I think it would be more beneficial if the team was larger, or if more people were using it. As it is right now, there's lots of work for not so much consumers for that.
So next session is Tom's, and I really want to go to see his session, and I do need to go prepare more tea because I'm falling asleep. So I'm going to have the adrenaline crash now. But thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Michael, for rescuing us. Thank you to the DQMH Trusted Advisors. Thank you to everyone who stayed at the end. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Joerg.
Yeah.
Talk to you later.
In a few minutes, guys.
See you in a bit.
Next presentation.
Bye.
Bye.